Nat here with Nat's Knots. I'm going to show you guys how to make this beautiful garden pillowcase. You can follow along with the written pattern linked below if you'd like. There are also links to quick stitch tutorials if you need a refresher of any stitch used in this tutorial. I do have tutorials for each granny square used in this pillowcase, and I'll link those below as well. And there are also written patterns and diagrams for those as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tutorials like this and to see what else I end up making. We're going to need an 18 by 18 inch pillow scissors, a 4mm hook, tapestry needle, 3 buttons, mine are 2 centimeters each, stitch markers, paper and pen might be useful, and then your 9 granny squares. So I am using 4 of the daisy flower granny squares. I'm using 2 of the fairy flower granny squares, 2 of the tulip granny squares, and then 1 pointed petal flower granny square. Once again, there are patterns and tutorials for each of these, and you can use any combination of these as you would like. First, we need to count the stitches on one side of each type of square that we have. Then we're going to use the square with the greater number as our common number. And then we're just going to do a round of single crochets with any needed increases on the squares with fewer stitches to equal the common number of stitches. For the daisy granny square, I have 29 stitches per side. The tulip granny square, I also have 29 stitches per side. The fairy flower granny square, I have 24 stitches per side. And the pointed petal flower granny square, I have 23 stitches per side. So we're going to use 29 as our common number. So the fairy flower granny square needs 5 more stitches per side, and the pointed petal flower granny square needs 6 more stitches per side to equal 29 stitches. So we'll start with the fairy flower granny square. So to get 5 more stitches, we will put 2 single crochets into each corner space per side, which will give us 4 of the needed additional stitches. And then in the center of each side, we will increase in one of the stitches by single crocheting twice into it. This will give us the last one of the needed additional stitches. So we'll mark the center 12th stitch in from a corner on each side. So we will start with a standing single crochet into any corner space. Start with the slip knot already on our hook, and then make a single crochet just as you normally would. And then single crochet into that same corner space. And then we'll single crochet into each stitch until we get to the marked stitch. When we get to the marked stitch, we will do 2 single crochets into that marked stitch, and then we'll single crochet into each stitch until we get to the next corner space. And once we get to the corner space, we'll do 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 single crochets into that corner space. And then we'll repeat that same thing for each side and each corner. And once we get to the corner we started in, we'll just do 2 single crochets, and then we'll chain 2 and then we'll do an invisible join into the second single crochet of the round. See, this is why I like to start with a standing single crochet, is because it's easier to see where that first stitch is. So there's the first, and there's the second. So insert your tapestry needle under both loops and then bring it back, and then into the back loop of the stitch that our tail's coming out of. Then we got to weave in our ends to secure, and repeat that same process for as many fairy flower granny squares that you have. Now we'll prep the pointed petal flower granny square. So we need 6 more stitches on each side of this one. So we will put 2 single crochets into each corner space per side, which will give us 4 of the needed additional stitches. And then on each side we will increase twice to give us the last 2 needed additional stitches. So let's mark the 7th stitch in from each corner on each side. And we'll start with a standing single crochet, just as we did on the last one. So just start with the slip knot already on your hook, and make a single crochet just as you normally would. And you can start in any corner space, then single crochet again into that same corner space. Then single crochet into each stitch until you get to the first marked stitch. And then into the marked stitch, put 2 single crochets. And then single crochet into each stitch until you get to the next marked stitch. And into the next marked stitch, put 2 single crochets into that stitch. And then single crochet into each stitch until you get to the next corner space. Into that corner space, we'll do 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 single crochets. And we'll repeat that same process for each side. So in each corner space, do 2 single crochets, chain 2 and 2 single crochets, and in each marked stitch, just put 2 single crochets. So we'll do that all the way around. And once we get back to the corner space that we started in, we will do 2 single crochets, chain 2, and invisible join into the second single crochet of the round, just like we did on the last square. And then repeat the same process for each pointed petal flower granny square. So hopefully that helps you understand how to increase to get your squares to the same size. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, share, whatever you'd like to help me know what kind of tutorials you guys like. And once you have the layout of your squares, how you want them, we'll start by connecting 2 of the bottom corners. I already connected it here, but I'll show you how to do it here. It's going to be exactly the same. Insert your hook from front to back into the corner of the right square, then from back to front into the corner of the left square. Grab your slip knot with your hook and pull through both corners, and chain one to secure. Then line up the stitches along the edges of the 2 squares while holding your working yarn kind of up and to the right side just to get it out of the way. We'll connect with a slip stitch by inserting from the top down into the back loop of the first stitch on the right square, then from the top down into the back loop of the first stitch on the left square. So keep in mind we're doing top down for both squares when inserting our hook. And then yarn over, pull through both back loops and the loop on your hook. So all those loops. Then repeat this process for each pair of stitches until you get to the next corners. Once we get to the next corners, we'll connect them with a slip stitch as well. So insert your hook from the front to back into the corner of the right square, then from back to front into the corner of the left square. Yarn over, pull through both corner spaces and the loop on your hook. Connect the next pair of squares in the same exact way and continue that same process for the rest of this row. So you should be connecting 3 pairs if you're using similar sized squares. Once you connect the end corners of the last pair of the squares of this row, fasten off. And then do the same thing on the other side, just working in the opposite direction. The stitches will slant a little bit towards the center. This is why we are wanting to work in opposite directions to make it more symmetrical. Now we're going to connect the other edges of the granny squares in the same exact way as we just did. So we'll just work right over the previous rows that we did. Now we'll clean up the edges of our front panel with a round of single crochets. So start with a standing single crochet into any corner space. Single crochet into that same corner space. So you'll have a total of 2 single crochets, including the standing single crochet. And then single crochet into each stitch and each chain space along the edge of the panel until you get to the next corner space. So we'll work into that space and then into the next corner of the next granny square. So into each corner of each granny square. And once we get to the next corner space, we'll do 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 single crochets into that corner space. And then we'll repeat that same thing all the way around. So we're just working single crochets. And then into each corner, 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 single crochets. When we get to the corner space that we started in, we'll do 2 single crochets, chain 2, and then we'll invisible join into the second single crochet of the round. So we need to make a chain that will stretch to reach the length of our front panel. If you make the chain the same amount as stitches that you have, then it's going to be too long. So we just need it to stretch to be long enough. So I did a chain of 60 and then plus 3 and then double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. And then double crochet into each chain along your foundation chain. And after working your last double crochet of the row, we'll chain 3, turn, and then double crochet into each stitch. So we'll repeat that for as many rows needed to match the height of our front panel. So I did 30 rows and just fastened off at the end. And then now we're going to clean up the edges of the back panel with a round of single crochets, similar to what we just did on the front panel. And then we'll make any necessary increases to equal the amount of stitches on the edges of the front panel. So for example, I have 90 stitches on each side of my front panel, so this will be my common number. I have 30 rows on my back panel, and I need to work a total of 90 single crochets. So on the end of each row, there will be either a double crochet or a chain 3. If I work 3 single crochets into each side double crochet or chain 3, then I'll get the 90 single crochets that I need. And I'll do that for both sides. And similarly, we need the stitches on the top and the bottom of the panel to equal 90, or to equal our common number. So since I have 60 stitches along the top and the bottom, I need to increase to equal my common number of 90. If I single crochet twice into every other stitch, this will give me the 90 stitches. So I'm going to do that for the top and the bottom of the panel. So I'll begin with a standing single crochet. And I'll do 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And then single crochet into the next stitch. And then 2 single crochets into the next stitch. We'll repeat that all the way until we get to the end of this row. So doing my last 2 single crochets here, and then we'll chain 2 before starting on the next edge. So after our chain 2, we'll do 3 single crochets around the post of the end stitch, or the chain 3 of each row. And after the last single crochet of this edge, we'll chain 2 before starting the next edge. And then we'll do the same thing that we did on the top. After the chain 2, we'll single crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 single crochets into the next stitch. And we'll repeat that all the way to the end. And after the last single crochet of this edge, we'll chain 2 before starting the next edge. And then we'll do the same thing that we did on the other side. So after the chain 2, we'll do 3 single crochets around the post of each end stitch, or chain 3. And do it all the way down. When we get to the end, after our last single crochet of this edge, we'll chain 2, and then we can just slip stitch into the first stitch of the round. You can invisible join into the second stitch of the round if you want, but I think fastening off with a slip stitch is totally fine here. So we'll just chain 1 and cut to fasten off, or however you fasten off. And now we'll get started on our back flap. And really we're going to make our flap by decreasing at the beginning and end of each double crochet row, except the first row. The first row will just be normal, and we'll do it for the amount of rows that'll equal half the amount of rows of our back panel. So 15 is half for me because I had 30 rows of my back panel, so I need 15 rows for my back flap. So make a foundation chain with the same number of chains that we made for our back panel. So mine is a chain of 60, and we're going to do a row of double crochets along our foundation chain. And after working your last double crochet of the first row, chain 3 and turn. We'll do our first decrease. We'll do it over 2 stitches. So we'll yarn over, insert into the first stitch, grab our yarn, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then instead of completing the stitch, we'll yarn over again, insert into the next stitch, grab our yarn, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through all the loops on our hook. And now we'll just do regular double crochets until we have 2 stitches left. and then we'll decrease again. So yarn over, insert, grab your yarn, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, insert into the next stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through all the loops. So I'll show you one more time. So chain 3 and turn, and then so we're just going to do the same exact thing for each row. So once again, yarn over, insert, grab your yarn, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, insert into the next stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through all the loops on your hook. And then we'll just do regular double crochets until we have 2 stitches left, and we'll decrease into the last 2 stitches of the row. And we'll do that for as many rows as we need. So I did 15 rows. So 14 of those rows are decreased rows because the first row is just regular. And now we're gonna clean up the edges of our back flap similar to what we did on our back panel. So we can keep our working yarn and just turn our work using the same working yarn. Start on this side edge and we'll do 3 single crochets around the post of each end stitch, or chain 3 of each row. And after the last single crochet of this edge, we'll chain 2 before starting the next edge. And now we are at the longer edge, so we're going to do the same thing that we did on the back panel. So do 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets into the next, and then 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets into the next, and that will give me the common number of 90 that I need. So I'll do that all the way down. And then after the last single crochet of this edge, I'll chain 2 before starting the next edge. We'll do the same thing down this side that we just did on the other side. So we'll put 3 single crochets around the post of each end stitch, or chain 3 of each row. And then after the last single crochet of this edge, we'll chain 2 before starting the next edge. And now we'll mark where we want our buttonholes to be. So I marked the first and the last stitch of the row. And then counting inward from both ends, skip 3 stitches from our first marked stitches, and then mark the next stitch after skipping 3 stitches. And then find the center 3 stitches of the row and mark the stitches right before and right after the skipped 3 stitches. So the 3 stitches in between our markers are where we'll skip, and we'll chain 3 instead. After we did our chain 2, we'll single crochet into that first stitch, which should be a marked stitch, and then we'll skip 3 stitches between the markers, and we'll chain 3, and then single crochet into the next marked stitch. Then single crochet into each stitch until you get to the next marked stitch. And then single crochet into the next marked stitch and skip 3 stitches, chain 3, and then single crochet into the next marked stitch. And we'll just repeat that. So single crochet into each stitch until we get to the next marked stitch. And into the next marked stitch, we'll single crochet, and then we'll skip the next 3 stitches, chain 3, and then single crochet into the next marked stitch, which is the last stitch of the row. And then we'll chain 2 and invisible join into the second single crochet of the round. And go ahead and weave in any remaining ends, any other ends you haven't weaved in yet. And we'll just get those out of the way. We'll connect the front and back panels. So first we'll lay down the back panel. The outer stitches, or V's, will slant slightly toward a direction. So lay the side down that the stitches are slanted toward so that the slant is facing toward the outside of the pillowcase, and the side facing down will be the outside of the pillowcase. Next, we'll lay the front panel on top of the back panel and have where you want the bottom of your pillowcase to be at the top, and we'll leave that edge open to create a pocket to shove our pillowcase into later. So starting in the corner space to the left of where you want the pocket, insert your hook into the corner space of the front panel first, and then into the corner space of the back panel, and then grab your slip knot, pull your yarn through both corners and chain 1 to secure, and then insert your hook into the back loop of the first stitch of the front panel, and then insert from the back to the front. So the back of the panel is facing up right now and the front is facing down. So we're going in through the back side technically of the back panel, even though that's the side that's facing us, into the back loop of that back panel, and then yarn over, pull through both back loops and the loop on your hook. And so we'll repeat that for each pair of stitches until you get to the next corner. Once you get to the next corner, insert your hook into the corner space of the front panel first, and then into the corner space of the back panel. Yarn over, pull through both corners, and the loop on your hook. And so we'll continue connecting the next 2 pairs of edges and corners in the same way. And then stop after you connect the corners to the right of the edge where you want the pocket to be. That's when you'll fasten off. Alright, next we'll connect the back flap. So line the longer edge of the back flap up with the open edge of the front panel, and we'll have the side that the stitches or the V's are slanted toward facing up or toward the outside of the pillowcase. When looking at the front of the pillowcase, we'll start in the corner on the right side of the open edge. So working along the slip stitches that we made when connecting the front and back panel. On the side edge, insert your hook into the back loop of the third stitch down from the corner. Then insert from back to front, so the back of the back flap is facing toward the inside of the pillowcase and the front is facing toward the outside. So insert from back to front into the back loop of the third stitch down the side of the back flap. And then pull your slip knot through both back loops, chain one to secure. Next we'll insert our hook into the back loop of the next stitch toward the open edge of our slip stitch row, and then from back to front into the back loop of the next stitch on the back flap. And then yarn over, pull through both back loops and the loop on your hook. We'll repeat that for the next pair of stitches. Once we're at the corner, insert through the corners of all three pieces. So first we'll insert our hook into the corner space of the front panel, then into the corner space of the back panel, which is the piece in the middle, and then into the corner space of the back flap. Then yarn over, pull through all three corners and the loop on your hook. Unfortunately, I lost some footage here, but we're just going to connect the front panel and the back flap in the same way as we connected the front panel and the back panel, ignoring that middle back panel piece. Once we get to the corner, just as we did on the last corner, we'll insert through the corners of all three pieces. And then next we'll turn our work slightly and connect the first three stitches down the side of the front panel and the back flap in the same way as the other side. And then after connecting the third pair of stitches, we'll fasten off. Then weave in any remaining ends. Lastly, we'll sew on our buttons. So first we'll mark the posts where we want our buttons to be. So I marked the posts on the 13th row, counting from the edge with the flap, and then counting 18 posts in from each side. And then I just marked the center stitch between those outer markings. And then turn your pillowcase inside out and secure a button around each marked post by pulling the tail ends through and tying 3 knots. And then cut the excess yarn off, and that's it. Give yourself a pat on the back because we are done. I really hope you enjoyed this pattern and tutorial. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share, all the things. If you want to see more tutorials like this, thank you so much for watching.